Wake Me Up After the Apocalypse by Evil Goo. Chapter 12. Testing. They were currently over the Tri-Current, which meant they could track their direction by the government's ridiculous wall and find their way to the Calm Belt by South Blue. There were a few isolated islands in the Calm Belt. They would try their raid there, if there were any signs of former life. They needed a village stocked with supplies. They could see the outline of Impel Down from here, though Nami was certainly not brave enough to test a trip down there. Even if all the prisoners and guards were taken by the plants, there was no way she would go anywhere underground with the Red Vine. She was sure the air was just consistently choked with spores, and she could almost imagine what the dark, damp prison probably looked like. Red. Nope, not going to risk it. They were not that desperate. Our coding stores are getting fairly low, she noted, much to the concern of the scholars in the room. Nobody wanted another trip to Saboti, but the coding from the giant mangrove trees had just proven invaluable. If only there was a way to make it themselves. Could they take a cutting from the trees and grow their own, maybe? How big did they need to be to start producing the substance? She would have to ask Zifa. She guessed the woman would laugh in her face at the question, but it was worth a try. Let's keep heading towards the prison, and beyond it, compasses should work and we should be able to navigate easier. We'll head to Batarilla from there, due southeast. She knew the scholars were perfectly capable of navigating the island without her, but they tended to be an indecisive lot. Generally, Nami decided on their final route once the list of requisitions was passed by the community from the expeditions team. It made sense having the team lead and navigator be the person with final say on destinations, though whether they actually landed depended a lot on what the scholars observed once there. Any sign of a vine going blue was now an automatic no-go. She hoped they would find something worth the journey when they got to South Blue. She almost hoped they would miraculously find another grove of coding-producing trees. Anything to avoid Saboti. Barring that, when they did turn back around and head for the archipelago, she hoped the murderous pirates and marines had at least killed each other. Usopp did not intend to get into this situation. Nami had mentioned that she didn't much care for the green muscular fishman, though she had neglected to mention exactly what it was about him that bothered her. Took about 5 minutes working side by side with the guy for Usopp to recognize why. The woman, Zifa, who was in charge of delegating tasks related to all the crop farming on the island, was glad to hear that Usopp knew at least a couple rudimentary things related to the task, though most of that was from the dream world he had spent time in his head. Did that count? He knew how to grow his pop greens, in theory, but she had decided to pair him with someone else for the day anyway, as training. She actually looked apologetic when she sent him and Dion off together, listing the man as the one on duty for plowing the new field on the south side. Apparently, they had had some kind of disease wipe out several crops, and she'd been forced to block off some of the fields until they were sure it was safe to plant there again. That meant they needed more space to grow food, though she admitted they were running low on seeds due to the crop die-off. Dion seemed pretty strong, so Usopp personally felt a bit relieved. Maybe it wouldn't be too hard. Hell, on the flip side, maybe it was good if it turned out to be extremely difficult. He needed a way to build himself back up to his former strength anyway. It bothered him that all that work, 2 years of training on Boyne, yielded 0 results in the real world. His real body hadn't been running from monsters and traps and fighting for 2 years. He wanted to be strong again, even if it meant doing something as mundane as plowing fields. But maybe not a day and a half after waking from his comatose condition. He wasn't sure exactly how much work his body could take just yet. So, we don't have pack animals here. Everything has to be done by hand, Dion said, grabbing the handles of the rusted old metal plow and pushing it forward. The tapered edge pushed into the dirt easily, like a hot knife through butter, at the fishman's strength. The tall guy nodded to the front of the metal frame, where a bar stuck out. You can choose. You want to push or pull? We'll work together and get this done before noon. Ah, okay. Do we have to do anything else? Like plant seeds or something? Or does Zifa do that? Zifa takes care of all the seeds around here, Dion replied, pushing at the plow the second Usopp grabbed his end. Though her husband's the only one getting to do any planting, if you catch my drift. Usopp wished he had not. She's one hell of a fine woman, though she's got nothing on Nami, am I right? Only 3 women on this sausage fest of an island, and one's married, one's barely grown, and one's a solid bitch. No offense. You're pretty close with our team lead, yeah? Usopp was not actually doing any work. The crazy strength of the fishman basically meant that he was just trying to stay ahead of the plow and not get run over. Plus, it put him in pretty close proximity with the source of the strained one-sided conversation, which was definitely a minus. Is there another plow or something? There's a hand tiller over there. The man pointed, and Usopp noticed a tool leaning against a nearby tree. How about if you start tilling the raised soil? Just kind of break it up. I'm faster on my own with this anyway. Ah, he could handle that. He grabbed the long shovel-like instrument, noting the multiple bladed ends. It was kind of saw-like, and he tentatively began poking at the dirt with it, attempting to turn some clumps of dirt and clay into smaller bits. It was slow going, but Usopp was pleased to find himself not growing too tired as he worked at the task. Maybe it wouldn't take too long to build his strength back up after all. Why don't you have horses here anyway? Seems like it would be useful for getting more farming done quicker. Nah, there's limits to what we can take care of and get to grow, so we usually don't have to start new fields like this. There aren't too many of us. Plus, good luck finding a living horse anywhere. If it wasn't here before the red vine, it ain't coming up now. No living horses? Did the vine kill animals too? Usopp was hesitant to betray his ignorance on the situation to the other man, so he made a mental note to ask Nami about it later. You know, I was pretty pissed when she brought you up here. Sorry to say it, bro. Been trying to talk them into finding more women. Maybe one that isn't taken, or a kid, or a lesbian, to wake up and join us. It's depressing, not even having a chance at getting laid. Most depressing thing about the apocalypse, if you ask me. For real? What even was this guy? Wait, lesbian? Dion laughed, and he didn't much like the sound of it. Something about the pushy way this guy was forcing the conversation rubbed Usopp the wrong way. Like he was trying to say the kind of shit he couldn't get away with the others, and he was testing Usopp's tolerance for it. Oh, come on. I've never seen the redhead give a man the time of day. Well, most men. She's either a lesbian or she's banging the skinny doctor. She does spend an awful lot of time with the intolerable bastard. You seem pretty close to her. He said that once before. Was he looking for some kind of acknowledgement? He wasn't getting it from Usopp, that was for sure. What do you think? You ever see her with a man? Usopp stuck the tool in a particularly large clump of dirt so it stayed upright, tapping his fingers along the handle as he thought about what his response should be. He'd just started working with the fishman. It was going to be a hell of an awkward day if some of the choice words from his mind were to come out of his mouth just then. Hold on, what's with that look? Did you ever hit that? I gotta say, even before the pickings were slim to none, I would have had a girl as hot as that, upside down and sideways, if she gave me a chance, I think, Usopp shouted, making sure his words cut off Dion's and hoping it didn't sound too high and betray his stress. He felt his own face turning red. He was embarrassed at the entire situation, but not so embarrassed that he couldn't be mad. He wasn't ignorant. He knew a lot of guys probably talked about women like that. But Nami wasn't women, and he'd never been in a situation where he had to hear it. You should probably keep those thoughts to yourself. Dion stopped plowing just long enough to raise his hands mockingly, grinning. Oh, so sorry. Didn't realize you were one of those types. Don't get offended, bro. I'm just shooting the shit, trying to get a read on you. Usopp picked the tiller back up, feeling a little ashamed. It was a strange kind of feeling, like there was something sinful about him even hearing the man say these things about his friend. Was he overreacting? Or was he underreacting? Why did he kind of want to hit the guy? He wasn't usually the type to resort to violence if it could be avoided, but geez. I mean, Dion continued, clearly not taking Usopp's advice to heart as he continued to push the plow easily in straight lines. If she's your woman, I can respect that. I'll back off. She's always been an ice queen to me anyway, since the day I met her. It's a crime to have tits like those, and okay, clearly he was underreacting if Dion was going to try continuing with the subject. Oi, Usopp called, throwing down the tool rather violently and marching closer than was probably wise. He was definitely within reach of the ridiculously strong being. 1. She's nobody's woman, and I dare you to even insinuate that to her face. She'd kick your ass. 2. I can understand why she doesn't like you. If you say one more word, I'll kick your ass. You wouldn't be the first fish man, or even the second, that I'd fight for my Nakama. There. He felt a bit better now. He needed to establish this much about himself as a man, and about what being a Nakama meant. No one was going to insult Nami in front of him. He was a lot better now at controlling his debilitating, shaking fear, though his mind was still supplying him with worrying statistics about his chance one-on-one with the towering figure in front of him. Under normal circumstances, 80%. He didn't have his weapon, 40%. He was still weak as shit, 20%. He didn't know the lay of the land very well here, 10%. He could feel sweat covering his face as he stared down, up at, Dion, but he didn't break character. He kept the hard determination in his eyes, kept his posture as wide-stanced and intimidating as he could. Said fishman had stopped working and was staring back down at Usopp with a look of genuine surprise, brow and neck fins raised. Usopp didn't care much about someone talking about how Nami looked. That was a given. Anyone with eyes knew she was beautiful. Sanji, on any given day, was prone to singing her praises. He was even prone to invading her privacy at times, which in retrospect was fairly unwholesome, but never, even on his most woman-crazy tirades, would the guy ever disrespect them. Zoro would badmouth Nami all the time, but to her face. Usopp respected Nami too much to ever talk behind her back. This talking about her like she was an object. It was a bit too on the nose, given her past, too. It added an extra layer of disgust to the whole thing. Dion laughed. He opened his mouth to talk, and Usopp seriously wondered if he'd be able to reach the 9-foot-tall behemoth's jaw when he registered another voice, cutting off whatever Dion was about to say with that disturbing mirth in his eyes. Hey, god damn it, why can't I find any good help around here? Zifa. She sounded pissed, stomping up to the 2 men in the quarter-plowed field. Ah, Zifa, you know you don't have anyone faster at this than me. Uh-huh. And I can't seem to pair you and your fast fucking mouth with anyone. Don't look so worried, kid, she directed the last to Usopp, who had shrank back at the woman's sudden wrath, honestly wondering if it was possible to get fired from a non-paying job and what that would entail. You're not alone. I think Saber decked this idiot last week. Oh, Saber and I were just fooling around. Saber and I are just fine. I overheard his brother listing ways to poison you without anyone noticing, so I'd advise you to apologize to those 2 sometime soon. Usopp, walk with me. Since Dion is so fast, he can handle the work today. I could use help in Section C anyway. He was never so glad for an out in his life. and he gladly abandoned his task to follow the older woman down the path, leaving the loudly laughing and thoroughly amused fishman behind. Ignore him. I hoped he would be less annoying around a new face, but apparently that is not in his skill set. What did he say to get in a fight with the twins? Usopp couldn't resist asking, wondering if the guy was always like, well, that. Her mouth twisted to the side, cinnamon lips pursed in annoyance. You'd think a fishman would be less prejudiced, but the subject of so much himself in the old days. But no, he just loves to push other people's buttons. I'm going to do that again. Her mouth twisted to the side, cinnamon lips pursed in annoyance. You'd think a fishman would be less prejudiced, being the subject of so much himself in the old days, but no, he just loves to push people's buttons. I'm not going to air out anyone else's laundry, but let's just say there was alcohol, it was a bit of a party, that idiot insinuated something about Saber's personal life without reading the room, and now things are a bit awkward between them at mealtimes. I don't think there's anyone here that hasn't tried to fight Dion, except perhaps the doctor and the otaku. He seems like the kind of person Nami would have kicked off the edge of the island. Zifa laughed. She was carrying a hoe casually, and she swung it up over her shoulder in a playful gesture. You know her well. She's threatened to do just that almost monthly.